This is Art Television.
Okay, so now we'll talk. Those of you who want to go to the toilet or go outside, you're most welcome, or stay inside. Of course, many people will be listening online, I hope. And for a monk who gives so many talks, some to you, some to monks, some online talks over to Singapore or Hong Kong or whatever, to UK. Because even though you don't travel at this time because of COVID, still you just do lots of talks to many different countries. So often I think that I've taught on every subject there could be. By this evening, somebody just asked me, and they sort of said, well, why didn't you give a talk? Because I said, well, no, all these talks, some of the talks I've given is on rubbish. So no, you've never given that talk before. So today's talk is Buddhism and rubbish. So if anyone who complains afterwards, that was a rubbish talk, I said, yes, great, well done, you've understood it. Because sometimes when we talk about rubbish, there's sometimes that we reject it. But as a Buddhist monk, there's so many things which other people reject. You look at again and see some of its beauty and some of its delight. And using the idea of rubbish, one of the first metaphors which I remember was again from my teacher, Ajahn, years and years ago. And he was the one who he knew that what would happen when his Western disciples went over to the different countries which didn't have much of a tradition of Buddhism. And that one of the things you'd always have to do is actually talk to people, be their friend, and just to listen to the problems they have in their life. And of course that happens a lot, even though you had no lectures or education on counselling. Nevertheless, you soon became a very good counsellor. A lot of the time because of things which Ajahn taught you. And one of those things he always taught us was to remember, whenever you counsel somebody, they tell you their problems, marriage problems, life problems, money problems, and all these problems. To this day, I can't understand why people ask monks or nuns about these questions. Number one, as you all know, I have never been married. What do I know about marriage? Number two, I've never had kids. What do I know about raising children? Number three, I got no money. What do I know about economy? Number four, I don't have a job. What do I know about going to the office in the morning and getting a job? Number five, I don't have a car. What do I know about driving a car? What's the best? But there's all these questions which people ask you. I always give an answer, make it up as I go along most of the time, but with some kindness and some understanding about what's really being asked. By the end of the interview, or the end of the counselling session, that I've learnt something from Ajahn which not many people know. And I don't think they teach you this in the universities if you go to counselling courses. And that was the simile, as many of you may be beginning to know, to be a rubbish bin. This is my first simile to celebrate the idea of rubbish. Because my teacher said, if ever you do any counselling, listen to people's problems, you must always receive whatever they say, if possible without any judgment, just with kindness. Appreciating, you don't know why that's happened to them or just what they're going through, but you try and give as much kindness as you possibly can. But when they leave, you must imagine that you are a rubbish bin. So you can actually accept everybody's problems and difficulties in life. You can let, no matter, I don't know why they're putting the rubbish into me. I didn't do it, it's not my fault, but please accept that rubbish. But the most important part of that simile was what he added in the end. But please make sure you always imagine yourself to be a rubbish bin with a hole in the bottom. So what anybody tells you, whatever they put in you, it goes right through and you don't keep any of it. That was the most wonderful part of that simile. So it means that after people tell some terrible things which happened, and really difficult problems, and first of all I would worry about that. What can I do? I must do something to help them. And then afterwards you get full. So when the next person came, you wouldn't be able to listen to them, you'd be thinking about the last person. And you'd soon be a full rubbish bin, overflowing with trash. But instead, if you're a rubbish bin with a hole in the bottom, whatever you tell me, whatever you complain about, whatever you disclose to me about the difficulties of your life, it just goes right inside and goes right through, and afterwards there's nothing in there. I'm a rubbish bin with a hole in the bottom, so always empty to receive the next piece of rubbish you want to donate to me. And that's a wonderful little thing, that the idea of being a rubbish bin is not keeping anything. Being able to discard things. Being able to, it's not just polluting the planet. This is almost like a metaphor that everything which we use eventually breaks down, goes back to the soil, or goes back to all of the difficulties of your life too. Don't last. They all add each other. They fade away and other things happen. And because I've been here for long enough now, 37, 38 years now in this place, 46 years as a monk, so much you can see it doesn't last. Dhammasara, when did we build that? It doesn't last, Dhammasara. One day it's going to fade away. Same as Bodhinyana Monastery fades away. But it's worth making. It's one thing which I love telling people, because it was, I think I told people this in the Dharma last week. On 31st of January 31st of January 1991. That was when we had our big bushfire, big crown fire, on the hottest day ever at the time in West Australia. 46 degrees. 46 degrees, that's hot. That was before the fire came. When the fire came right through our monastery, boom, bang, as the trees exploded. But anyway, we were forced to evacuate when the fire was happening, all ready to defend. Had all the fire pumps going. But we were told we had to leave. When we did leave, I saw those trees exploding. And you could feel that this was incredibly hot fire. And Bodhinyana Monastery, I thought, was gone. I honestly thought that. But following morning, we were taken back there. See, all of the huts were still there. All of the huts are still at Dhammasara. All of the halls and dining halls are at Dhammasara. The only thing which is not a Dhammasara is you. The nuns. But they'll come back again in a day or two. But what was amazing was that you could let things go. Because it wasn't having the monastery or the facilities which was important. It was actually having the spirit, having the opportunity to serve and build. It was very, honestly, I mentioned this because it was absolutely true, that even though I thought everything was going to be burnt down, you went there the next day knowing, well, let's build it up again. Let's do it again. because it was the action which was more important than the results, the service. Can you see that in nature? The things do eventually fall down. They do get old. They do get rubbishy, like Ajahn Brahm. I'm getting much older than I used to be. People have shown me these photographs when I used to be able to go on top of roofs and fix them up. Now monks say if I get on top of the roof will buckle. You know, in Sunya, just next to my room, the place where I stayed, there's lots and lots of twigs in the gutter. I thought of getting up on the roof and taking them out, but I thought twice, no, it's better to keep the roof unharmed. But anyway, in the old days I would get up there and do stuff. But you can see just as you get things like old age, things start to decay. There's something beautiful about the decaying part of nature. You know, that things like turning into rubbish, what was really important to you, was really precious, eventually fades away and disappears. Its importance, is temporary. And everything which I cherished, which I owned, which I loved and cared for, things like your family, they're temporary. Doesn't mean you don't care for them. You care for them to the max, knowing they're not always going to be here. And when they do pass away, you said that was a beautiful time spent. You enjoyed each other's company so much. Thank you. And that's that old simile which I say a lot, of when you go to concerts. You brought out the concert being held here next week. Beautiful, beautiful concerts. They will never last. In fact, if they did last, then there'll be something unbeautiful about them. There'll be something which, after a while, you get bored. After a while, you turn away anyway to go see something different. But something about those great concerts, very short, that when it's finished, you feel just grateful. Grateful to have been there and enjoyed the great performance. You know that they will turn to dust, but nevertheless, it's important to be there and enjoy it while it's happening, knowing that you'll have to let it go and move away. And much of this you can find that when we understand the whole idea of rubbish, things which have used are no longer usable, it has a use. Rubbish is, obviously people recycle rubbish. I'm not going to go into that because that's talked about a lot. But whenever we do have rubbish, we know that whatever we use will one day just be thrown away. Is that bad? There was, for those of you who are traditional Buddhists, there's this one story about this monk Chulapantaka, and this was in the time of the Buddha, that his brother was fully enlightened, but his younger brother, this guy Chulapantaka, was just very intellectually challenged, and he couldn't really learn much theory or teachings. And he found it very difficult to meditate at first. But what his brother gave him, was it the Buddha or his brother gave him, just a piece of cloth. Just told him to keep rubbing the cloth. And so this is what his younger brother did, just kept rubbing the cloth until the cloth became quite dirty. And he kept on rubbing it until the cloth started to be frayed. And kept on wearing it until it started to break down. And his brother said, that's the nature of all the things which we hold dear to in life. Through use, through association, over time, it all tends to disappear and vanish and turn into rubbish. Just like the most beautiful things in Bodhinyana. Maybe not in my lifetime, but all those huts. And I was quite stupid when I started building those huts. I wanted to make them permanent. Do them well, do them once, and you don't have to do it again. Ha 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 ha. I thought, just build these things and it's all finished. No other monk will have to bother about it. But of course, that's not the nature of life. They tend to sort of start to fall apart. Or if they don't fall apart, just fashions fall apart. In other words, no, the windows are too small, we want to make them bigger. No, we don't want sort of a brick wall, we want a whitewash wall. No, we don't want it this way, we want it that way. And so, often, even Bodhinyana Monastery and Dhammasara Monastery, as you know, when people would come and they said, is it finished yet? And I would say, no. And they said, well, look, you've got all the huts there, you've got all the dining room there, you've got the meditation room. Is it finished yet? Never finished. Now I keep going on. They'll always be building something new. That's what's happened at Bodhinyana Monastery. We've been going much longer, again, 36 years. Is it finished yet? No way. No way. And this is actually our life. Things don't get finished. They get built, they get worn away, they turn to rubbish, and they get rebuilt. For those of you who've been to old countries, I remember just was born in London, and that London is built on rubbish. It's rubbish upon rubbish upon rubbish. And when people actually do excavations to put foundations in to another big building, they always come across the rubbish of old generations, sometimes 100, 200, 500, 1,000 years of age, and even longer than that, because that's what happens. Life creates that rubbish, and that rubbish becomes the foundation on which new buildings, new culture is made. Without that rubbish of past generations, our generation wouldn't have the foundations on which to grow and live. And sometimes that history is just our grandparents' rubbish. All the things which they did and used, which was so important to them, which wore out and new things were built afterwards. Sometimes that is not disrespect, but it's always like building on what other people have done. And that is the same, just even with ideas and teachings. So often, even in teaching about Buddhism, about meditation, yes, we have just the old teachings which you can read and understand, from even the time of the Buddha, about how these things worked and how meditation was taught. But can we improve on that? Of course, we can. In the time of the Buddha, that people would have, they wouldn't have zafus like you have these days. They just get some grass in the time. But can't we improve upon those zafus? I've often mentioned this. It'll be a great opportunity for anybody who wishes to innovate and get a lovely new business. Look at the meditation cushions you're sitting on right now, or the chairs. These are just so old-fashioned. Imagine look, we live in a world of high-tech. Can't we get high-tech meditation cushions? And once you start thinking like that, and I got this idea from this guy over in Singapore. This guy in Singapore, he was a designer. He actually, one of his great claims to fame was actually designing dresses for Princess Diana when she was still alive. He designed a couple of her dresses. So he's obviously a very, very smart guy living in Singapore. And his latest idea, when I saw him years ago, was designer Zimmer frames. If you think about it, the Zimmer frames which elderly people use, many of those elderly people are cashed up. So to getting them a designer Zimmer frame, they'll be in their budget, and you make a lot of money that way. Was that exploitation or was it just smart thinking? Designer Zimmer frames. I don't know, but anyway, please excuse me, I can't resist this one. I'm just saying today, because Dhammasara had, what do you call it, that, where you make donations to Dhammasara? Cashless donations, a little thing over there. You just put a credit card on, and it sort of puts money into Dhammasara. They're just trying it out over here. But I say that please, if anyone has Parkinson's disease, please be careful. About 20, 30 taps when you only made one, and that's your bank balance gone. Alzheimer's also, yeah. Alzheimer's. Did you put a donation in, Lawrence? Are you sure? Alzheimer's. Did I put it in? I'm not sure. Anyway, it's okay, we won't exploit you, maybe. But anyway, just for zafus. Now, why do we just have just fluff inside there? Because if you have designer zafus, with IT, first of all, you can actually adjust. They have different compartments to the zafu. So if your back needs lifting, you can just press one button and the back lifts up. If your knee is a bit sore, the other part lifts up so your knee can lift up. If it really is sore, you can give it a massage, like on those massage chairs you can sit on, so your knee gets a good massage while you're meditating. If you're too hot, like sometimes, who knows what we can put the temperature on there. The aircons aren't on today, but sometimes it's hot here, sometimes it's cold here. If it's really hot, you can get these blows of hot air coming up your body to warm you up. If it's too hot, you can get some coolness in there. If you have sloth and torpor, really tired, which many people have after coming here after a day's work or a week's work, and you come here for a Friday night and you're half asleep, you can press another little button for a coffee. Or if you like tea or cappuccino, you can have all sorts of buttons on there. Like a high-tech meditation cushion. I'm sure there's so many wealthy people over in the United States who meditate that you will make a fortune. Is that a good idea? Anyway, how do I get on to that? It's supposed to be a talk on rubbish, not about making a fortune. Is money rubbish? Yes. Really? So we've got a rubbish bin at the back over there. Put your rubbish in. No, is it? That was another thing which Ajahn Chah used to teach. Because, sometimes people ask, did Ajahn Chah make any predictions telling the future? So he actually did, a couple of times. And this prediction, I was there when he made it. He sort of said, in the future they will run out of paper to make banknotes. They won't have enough paper left. They're cutting down too many trees. And they will not run out of metal like silver or gold to make coins. So they'll have to find something else to use for money. And what he said, what they use for money in the future, is little balls of chicken poo. Chicken shit. The little balls you see of chicken shit? And so that's what they'll pay you in after you go to work for the week. 100 pellets of chicken shit for all your hard work. And you'd really ask for a rise in chicken shit because you're not getting enough to feed your family. And you go to the bank and you won't be putting money in the bank, little pellets of chicken poo in the bank. And the IMF will become the International Manure Fund. What's the difference between chicken shit and money? Only the value you put on it. That's the only difference. And so he predicted people will be fighting wars over chicken shit. Who makes the most? And looking at the economy as how much more chicken shit we can make in our different countries. I mean, that was something which was quite challenging because it had some truth to it. all this stuff which we value, what's its difference between rubbish? Only the value which we give to it. It's the same with so much other stuff we have. One of the great advantages I found with being a Buddhist monk is we can be rebellious. We challenge what it means to be comfortable and happy, what it means to be rich. Because many of you know where I live, in a cave. There's hardly anything there. And honestly, I'm just so happy in that little cave. It's quiet, it's cool, and I get some great meditation there. How many of you would like to live there? Yeah, a few people, yeah. You go and build yourself one. It's much cheaper than the house you live in, or the apartment you live in, or whatever else you live in. Just get a nice cave. But the trouble is that we're not allowed to build caves. Because, again, our system is not rebellious enough. We think, oh no, you need to have a kitchen, a bathroom, blah, 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 blah. You need to have this amount of space, this amount of space. But do you? I've lived in that cave, I don't know how many years now? Before you came, wasn't it? So I don't know, 10, 15 years, 20 years now? How many years, do you know? Remember how long I've lived in my cave? Yeah. Anyway, it's a long, long time, and it's very, very comfortable. So why is it we can't, all the people put their hands on, buy a cave and go and live in there? Instead of, my cave is it's like a hemisphere, if you want to know what it looks like. It's about 3 meters diameter, made out of rocks, and it's very well made, and I'm very grateful for the monks who made that for me. And it's so comfortable in there. I really enjoy it, and many of you have seen it, and it's one of the best accommodations in the whole of Perth. It doesn't cost much at all. So what it means is, for what some people think that's a rubbish place to live, why do people want to live in big houses? The why? So sometimes when we challenge these things, we can actually see different ways of doing things. I think those big places are just not free at all. Different ways of looking at the world. And this is also something which I spend a lot of time talking about. Freedom. What is freedom? What is a free world? And the weird thing is that being a Buddhist monk, and Buddhist nuns, we have so many rules we're supposed to be keeping, which we do keep. That's one of the things that we teach people what these rules are, and you learn them yourself, and you say, well, these monks actually do keep those rules. No, we don't have money. So this is one of the reasons why when I said I couldn't try out that that donation terminal, whatever it is, because I've got no money. Imagine what that's like, to travel around the world without money. And fortunately, no one's ever asked me, when I've gone through these customs and immigration, excuse me, sir, how much money you bring into the country? How much money are you spending here? Because they asked me, I said, zero, nothing, zip. They probably wouldn't let me in. But even though that I'm not going to any of these countries bringing money into the economy, you're bringing something else which is more important, which is why I keep getting invited to these places. Peace, happiness, joy, a different way of looking at things. Ways which can actually bring people together rather than separate people. Different ways of looking. For me, the money is that rubbish stuff. The wealth. Yeah, you've got to have some wealth, but that's rubbish stuff. Fame is rubbish stuff. So what do you really want in your life? Is that rubbish, or is it something which is really valuable? But sometimes you can check on that. If your house was burning, like in a bushfire, and you did have a chance to get in the house and get something to flee with before the fire hit, what would you take? What is very valuable for you? Would it be your credit card? Or would it be maybe your dog? What is very, really valuable for you? And sometimes, when you can't take anything at all, sometimes just your goodness is the most valuable. one thing which I always remember, and also talk about a lot with the monks as well, not things, not sort of, photographs or mementos or medals. That's not important. What is really important is like the service which you gave, which is why you got that medal in the first place. That is what is important. And that's something which is not rubbish, and that's something which doesn't fade. That is something which stays in your heart forever. The service, the goodness, the kindness, what you've given to others. And I don't just mean money, I mean just the help which you've given. Just, like good old Dennis, I don't know how many years he's been president from time to time here. So much service which is given to this Buddhist Society of Western Australia for so many years. Turned him into this beautiful, grey, going blind, but very happy person who people respect. And that is something which is so valuable in this world. That is not rubbish. Just know how you are held with love in people's hearts. That is something which is priceless. That's why its value is way beyond, a monetary calculation. It's one of the reasons why I've been using that word a lot, priceless. As many of you know, those stories when people ask, how much do I have to pay to come into your Buddhist Society West Australia? And when I used to say nothing, they said, okay, you can't be any good then. Because if you want to sort of go to a place which is really good, a really good teacher, you have to pay for that. Do you? I know, all these motivational teachers, I used to come in, was it Tony Robbins, was it, or something? Or I don't know who the motivational speakers are. I used to pay a fortune for those. Ajahn Brahm? Nothing. And I remember a few people, because I know some rich people, and they just went to a weekend with these motivational speakers, $5,000 or $6,000. And then they came to one of my weekends, and they said, wow, you are much better. Why don't you charge more? I said, well, I do charge. The cost of coming to my talks is priceless. In other words, it's not sort of given a monetary value at all, because that monetary value can never reach what is given. The importance of just kindness and giving, by example, not just by words. That's one of the other things which is important value. If you just give a talk, and it's just words, just arguments, there's nothing behind it, there's no practice, no living that life, that doesn't have much value. That is rubbish. There are some people who give amazing talks. When I read them, and just see what they say, wow, how can they talk so fluently, so eloquently, and so deeply? But it doesn't have power. There's something which I've seen so many times. If a person is actually living that life, if they're practicing it, they're not just faking it, it's amazing just how powerful that is. Some of the teaching, I'm sure you can hear the same teachings in far more eloquence than I can give you. But it's where it's coming from is different. These little things like I tell that you are, all the nuns, they are renunciates, they're living that life. You go and check them out, see them. As they speak, so they live. Same with the monks, and that gives these teachings an extra power to them, especially in a world where there's a lot of dishonesty, a lot of falsities. People say one thing and they live a totally different life, a life where we've lost respect for so many people who used to be given so much authority, but they lost that authority. And I can understand why it is that people these days, they just want to have trust in at least some group of people. It's one of the reasons why, I think I told this at an ordination a week or two ago, why it is that one of my friends, a monk over in Malaysia, was actually Venerable Agachita years ago, when he was setting up his temple in Taipei, in Malaysia, that he did a survey first of all. He's a very highly educated monk. He surveyed as many of his lay followers as possible and asked them, what type of monk would you like? Should that monk be a great teacher? Should he be a monk who can tell great jokes? Should he be a monk who writes books? Should he be a monk who's a great scholar? Should he be a monk who's a great meditator? Should he become a monk who keeps all the precepts? Should he be a monk who can travel around and teach your kids? What type of monk would you want? And the category which won, hands down, he showed me the results and I was so inspired and impressed, said the type of monk they wanted most, and that was just for a monk, the type of nun they want most as well, is the one who keeps the precepts. A virtuous person. Because they were the rarest to find in the world. Someone who lived what they taught, instead of saying one thing, practicing differently, which made their words not worth anything at all, just rubbish words. So little by little, that's so important that to give whatever we do, whatever we speak, whatever we write, that extra power by living this. And even I remember to some of my followers over in Singapore that there was this one Buddhist, no, it's this one, was he a Buddhist? No, he was a Christian, a pastor, who was caught making so much money, like millions of Singapore dollars. And, a lot of that was done fraudulently, so he was going to go to jail. And that really made the Christian community in Singapore just really a bit upset about their leaders. And at the same time that I was in the newspaper for something else, and I was interviewed, and what I said there, and it was confirmed that whenever I go teaching anywhere in Singapore, I don't get any money at all. I don't have any bank account, don't have credit card, don't have nothing. It's always great fun in that sense when you're a monk. You don't have any driver's license, bank account details. I don't own anything. So, but look how well I live. And I said in this article, sort of, in today's world, you don't need money or a credit card if you're kind and giving and serving and helping, living simply. And then, I think the next day, in the letters column, one of these pastors said, we can learn from this Ajahn Brahm fella. Just look, there he is. I had a good reputation in Singapore. There he is, living very peaceful, doing such good work, and he doesn't charge a thing for anything. All done for free, for gratis, for the love of it. People give donations afterwards, but not to me. They give it to Dennis and the treasurer over there. It goes into supporting this place. But for monks and nuns, we do it just for the joy of it, for the service of it, for the love of it. And you get so much happiness and joy back. And that's one of the greatest things, to have that service as your wealth. When people ask, who's the wealthiest people in this room? They're sitting in the front seats here. They're wealthy. And I've met some very wealthy people that are often mentioned as billionaires. But those wealthy people are nothing. They're only wealthy in the amount of worry they have. I guess they've got lots of money in the bank, but they don't have the peace and happiness which you see in your monks and nuns here. They don't have that because they're worried so much. They're not free. One of the great things about this life, you learn the meaning of freedom. It's not the freedom of desires, as I often say. It's the freedom from desires. You don't want anything. You just want to give. What can I give you? What do you want? How can I help? How can I serve? And that's such a great joy to be able to serve others. It's such a great joy to serve others. That's why even simple things, like opening the door to one of you, when according to our rules and traditions, you're supposed to open the door for me. Simple thing, but I love doing that, opening the door to people. And just doing whatever you can do to carry something for them, or whatever. However I can do to serve others, to be kind, to put that kindness into real good practice. And that record of service you should build up over the years. The giving, the goodness, the helping others, expecting nothing back in return. That gives us a huge wealth inside. A huge power. Spiritual power, and even psychic power as well. I'm not sure. I'm sure the nuns did a lot of chanting to keep that bushfire out of their property. Certainly the monks did, certainly I did. So you knew, honestly, that I knew that fire, no chance of getting into Dhammasara. No chance in the world. Simply because there are such things as heavenly beings. Can I tell this story? Yeah. I haven't told this story for a while. This is the heavenly being story, real one, of the monk. Well, it wasn't a monk yet. This American who met a heavenly being. It's an absolutely true story. And I've got to be careful saying this because this happened in Thailand, and there is that very strict rule of lèse majesté. You can't say anything bad about a king. Listen to this story, just to finish off with. I'm not saying anything bad at all, but just saying something wonderful about one of the former kings of Thailand. This young man, he'd gone over to Thailand to do Peace Corps work. So 2 years over in Thailand, doing Peace Corps work, and then before he went back to the United States and just get a job, get married and start all that sort of stuff, he's decided to try and be a monk, Buddhist monk, just for a short time. But he didn't know what to do. How do you become a monk in Thailand? And so he was staying at a hotel on the outskirts of Bangkok, and he asked a concierge. Now the concierge knows other places to send Americans, but not monasteries. But he did hear that there was one monastery in the centre of Bangkok, Wat Bhawan, which sometimes had Western monks. So he said, go there, go to this place, Wat Bhawan, in the centre of Bangkok, and go there early in the morning, take some food, and wait for the monks to come out and put some food into one of the monks' bowls and just ask them, he knew a little bit of Thai, not that much, ask them he wants to become a monk. So that's what he did. The advice wasn't very clear or precise, so he went there really early in the morning, about 4 o'clock, 4:30 or something. And the monastery was all locked up. It was closed. No one was around. And so he was walking up and down outside this monastery, Wat Bhawan, not knowing what to do. And this Thai man came up to him and asked him, said, "No, who are you? How can I help?" Because Thais are, certainly in those days, were very, very polite and very helpful. So he said, he was an American, he wanted to become a monk. And the Thai man said, "You're really early, you come about a couple of hours too early." But the Thai man said, "Never mind. I've got the keys, I can let you inside." So he took this Westerner inside the monastery. He opened the doors. It was a metal doors in front of the Uposatha hall, the boat. Your Thai is called the Royal Gate. And I'll tell you why afterwards if you don't already know. And then went into the main hall, turned on the electric lights. He had the key, opened the main hall, a Holy of Holies there. And he described all the paintings, all the murals on this 200-year-old hall. and who painted them, why they were painted, and the story which those murals told. And if you know that Thai art in those days, every one of those murals told a story. It's like a cartoon, but cartoons in the West, they would start from the left and they go to the right, then the next level. These go around all sorts of different trajectories. If you know the story, you can actually tell what they are. But even sometimes I know those stories, but can't actually figure out how they all connect together. But the 2 hours went past so quickly. So quickly that he was so fascinated by all this history of the temple, but this Thai man knew. Then the Thai man said, it's about time now the monks will be coming out any minute, so go out the gate again, turn right, and then wait for this old monk. He's the one you should speak to. And that's what this Westerner did, this American. And I know this American. It's a true story. Happened in my lifetime in Thailand. And soon that monk came out, and he put some food in the bowl, asked if he wanted to become a monk, and the man, this American was told to wait and was taken to start the training, being a monk. And after a few days, the American said, look, the monk you've given me to teach me all the chanting and the rules and stuff, I can't understand him. His English is no good. And the other monk said, this is the best English speaker we've got in the whole monastery. And that is where this American said, well, what about that temple attendant who I met on the first day? What temple attendant? The guy who opened the door for me. You can't go through that door. That gate is the royal gate. The only people allowed through that gate in Wobble One are members of the royal family. You know how much they hold that tradition. And you can't turn electricity on there. And not even the abbot knows all the stories behind those paintings. They took him straight to the abbot. That was Somdet Nyanasamwara, became the head monk of Thailand. But that time he was the abbot of the temple. And he said the abbot was listening to all of this and stopped him. And he said, wait, and called in the secretary. This needs to be recorded. And this is pretty much a true story. I did tell this story in the Thai embassy in Singapore once, and the ambassador there interrupted me. Actually, afterwards, he said, yeah, I've seen that story written down. It's true, it actually happened. But anyway, the abbot wrote it all down, or the secretary rather. But at the end of the story, of course, they asked the question, what did that man look like? That temple attendant we don't know exists. The one who opened doors which only royal family can open, which, no one's got the key, no temple attendant's got the key to the main hall. There's only a couple of monks have that key. And not even the old abbot knew all the stories behind the paintings. He said, what did he look like? You know what happens, when you have to try and describe a person, especially if you're in, a different country. I don't know, he just was Thai. He was wearing traditional Thai clothes, he said. That was one interesting thing. Not modern clothes, traditional Thai clothes. But what did he look like? And he couldn't think, this American couldn't think exactly what this guy looked like. And so he was scratching his head, literally, because that's what Westerners do. Thais don't do that. Scratching his head. And he stopped. He was looking at a portrait in the abbot's office. It's him. That's the one. That's the one I met. That was a portrait of one of the sponsors of that temple when it was first built, His Majesty King Rama V, who died about 150 years prior to that incident. That went down in the books. A heavenly being coming down to help a young man become a monk. And that's one of the most amazing real-life, heavenly being stories you can imagine. It's in the books. It happened. I know that guy, that monk. I lost contact with him a long time ago. He went back to America. I'm not sure where he went to. But this is amazing what happens. So, when you're a good monk or a good nun, there are lots of other beings who will look after you, especially in a place like Dhammasara. I remember going there the first, goosebumps. I remember going there the first time with Ajahn Chittapala's brother, Ajahn Chittamala, when it was on auction, going in there and chanting my heart out to actually get that place for our Bhikkhuni Sangha. You could feel there's energy in that place. Good beings looking after you. That's why we got it. That's why it's been a very successful, beautiful monastery. That is why. Sorry, fire demons. You go find another place to burn. But not Dhammasara. That place is safe. Okay, there we go. I don't know if that's a rubbish talk tonight, but I started on rubbish and see where it went to. So thank you all for listening.